I promised that we were going to talk about hormones and sex when we came back. You know,
Ready?
I'm not. You know what's funny is that when I was a kid and anybody was talking about sex and my mother would get all uptight and be like, what are you getting so uptight about? What is your deal? And now, oh my goodness, I'm so uptight talking about this, but there's so much more riding on it.
Right.
I want my child to make the right choices. I want to instill in him the right ideals. I'm just not 100% sure that I know what those ideals are. You know, and the world changes, and our topic for today that we try to filter everything through is generalization.
Right.
Oh my goodness, isn't this important here? How do you generalize?
Yeah.
Because every single person that he comes into contact with is going to have a completely different upbringing, and they're going to have different rules. Vince,
that ambiguity.
You know, this is a minefield. This is an absolute minefield. So tell us what.
Well, and I think what you were saying was right on. I mean, our ideals, our backgrounds, are the way we've raised our children. That's not going to change regardless if it's our child with a disability or a typical developing child. That ideals are still going to be something we instill with the kids.
That's good to hear, because I don't always think of that, Vince. I don't always think of that. I think he has to have special rules, special considerations, and I forget that sometimes it's just the rules are the rules are the rules.
Right. And I think there's reasons for it. They're not just rules because this is the way mom and dad said it. These are rules because these are our upbringing. We want them to be, you know, when they're younger, this isn't something that we want them to engage in. You know, hand-holding or going to dances, maybe kissing and curl. We can definitely work on those and when those are appropriate. But when it comes to sex and it comes to intercourse or intimate relationships, those are things that we want them to engage in later in life, when they're older, when they're more mature, when they're able to understand a relationship or be in a relationship. And I don't think that changes regardless of disability. But what happens is, and we were talking a little bit quickly during the break, is the game. The game is going to be the main thing that we focus on when we're working with adolescents, is how to read into communication, how to understand what the person's trying to tell you. Because our kids are very literal, and we tell them one thing, they know exactly what they're supposed to do. A teen and an adolescent, you tell them one thing, you've now got 3 options. Right. What really are they trying to say? When is it okay to call a girl? When is it okay to text back? When is it okay to not text back? When is it okay to hold a hand? When is it okay to go to a dance? All of these types of things, which, you know, are very innocent, but also there's no discrete answer. There's no one answer to this. It's really going to depend on the situation. So a lot of what we have to do is to teach them how to read into social cues. Okay, when she said this, was she angry? Or was she happy? What was her body language? What were her gestures? Was it sarcasm versus real? Exactly. What was her gestures? Was she looking at you? Was she playing with her hair? Okay, maybe she is interested. Or was she just looking at you and kind of looked like she was, you know, this was more of a joke, you know? It's that literal versus communicative intent. And that's going to be hard for a lot of our kids. Yeah. And that's hard for a lot of us, period. Come on, let's face that. We all have friends that this is hard for them to understand, I think I was not good at this. I think I played with her hair. You're like telling me things I don't know. I was supposed to play with my hair when I was flirting with my husband? No, you probably did. And you just didn't know it. Just instinctively I did? Right. It's one of those social cues where, you know, if someone's uncomfortable but yet interested, they'll look away, they'll play with their hair, they'll fidget, you know, those kind of things. All right. We have to teach our kids some of these things so that because they're very good about focusing in on something if they have, like you had mentioned earlier, a rule book. So if they're able to follow the rules, look for this, look for this, look for this, clues, they'll be able to understand the intent a lot better than if they were just entering in these relationships without. But it's not going to be cut and dried. It is going to be shades of gray. We have a lesson in skills called Shades of Gray. Right. Because and we have to teach them how to deal with it. Right. Right. How to deal when you're wrong. How to deal when, you know, and again, is this any different than any of us? We're going to throw ourselves out there in a relationship. And we're either going to get hurt or it's going to work. Right. You know, so. And we have to notice if what we did worked and where we might have made a mistake, reflect on it, executive function skills to say, okay, what did I do wrong that I can apply differently the next time? I can problem solve, I can plan differently, I can use a different strategy if it comes to asking somebody out, if it comes to just communicate, just reaching out to foster that relationship. Our kids are very, you know, most often, you know, we'll need that extra prompting or initiation to be able to just reach out, to make that first phone call, to make that first text, to make that first email or, you know, Facebook friend or all the other different ways we've talked about today. But after they do that, what happens then? what's the next step, or how do they deal with the rejection? It's all a part of that learning process, and it's all very important. I mean, while we always want to protect our kids and not let them hurt, part of learning and part of the executive functioning, expansion in their lives is going to come with, some of that rejection and some of that failure for reaching out.
And ultimately, the thing that's, I think, really hard about this is that we want this for our kids. We want our kids to grow up, to have meaningful relationships, to, ultimately be in a relationship with somebody that they love and that loves them. So, of course, we want those things, but getting them from this point to that point, woo, rocky.
Very rocky. A lot of extra time, a lot of emotions, a lot of time, a lot of discrete teachings that we have to do. Again, some of this very typical, some of it probably a little bit more intensive than we would do on a day-to-day basis, but it's needed because you had framed it perfectly. We want them to fit in. We want them to have these experiences that we all had, that everyone else had. And if we have to set it up, meaning that we have to give them the tools to be successful prior to it, so be it. Because we need them to have that opportunity to fail or to succeed. We need them to have that social opportunity to fit in, to be one of the, just one of the crowd, one of the peers.
Okay, let's take a little bit of a talk about hormones, because hormones on a teenage body do a lot of things, and then we factor in autism or Asperger's or whatever. And our kids are going to be in lots of different places on the spectrum with lots of different abilities to socialize or not to socialize. What kinds of things can I look forward to or not look forward to as a parent with hormones that I should be aware of that are going to be slightly different from the neurotypical kids and the kids with autism? I would imagine that there is for some of our kids, that there's a difficulty with knowing when all these feelings are appropriate to act on and when they aren't.
Okay, right. I mean, I think that's definitely something that we would have to look to. I think the number one thing when I think of hormones with our kids on the spectrum, the number one thing that pops out to me is change. Right? One of the things that we've always known going out through, early intervention to, middle school to high school is change and transition are usually something that our kids need a lot more help with or a lot more prompting. Well, what's the main thing that happens when you hit puberty? Everything in your body changes. Your voice changes. Your hair grows places it wasn't before. Women grow breasts. They start their menstruation. Boys' voices change. They get older. They, like I said, they get bigger. Their face breaks out. All these different types of hormonal changes happen, and they don't know why. I mean, they don't understand it. It cognitively does not make sense. Where we have to come in and say, okay, this is part of development, and explain that it's okay, reassure them that nothing's changed, that they're going to be fine. These are the things you need to do. And again, giving them rules, giving them, I wouldn't say rules, but giving them structure on guidelines. These are the things you need to do for this, and now you need to wear a bra, or now you need to, put deodorant under your pits, and now you need to shave your legs, and now you need to use acne cream. Giving them the tools that they need to be successful and to be able to manage the change that's going on. It's very anxiety producing for our kids when these types of changes come out of nowhere and there's no explanation. One of the things that I highly recommend is that we talk about it with the kids as they start. I think for many, our first reaction is just to not really talk about it, just kind of let it happen. Let's just see what happens and see what goes. I think that's a delicate balance. I think it's a risky balance because our kids, we already know historically, are going to need some transitional warnings and some types of transitional explanation on why these things are changing. I think it's best that we have open communication with the kids and talk to them about it. As they're approaching puberty age and we start to see any of the signs, whatever first sign it is, that we immediately start talking to them about, okay, these are the types of changes that are going to happen. You're going to go breasts, you're going to get hair under your arms, you're going to get facial acne, whatever it may be, to start showing them what it is, start desensitizing them a little bit to it so it's not such a new thing, maybe showing them pictures, showing them videos, showing them, maybe someone who was in a kids program that they used to like, what do they look like now? Look, they have more hair, they have facial hair, things, those types of things, so that when these things happen, it's not as surprising
or frightening. It's interesting because two things that I wanted to say. This this last Christmas, I hadn't seen it in a lot of years. We were watching the Walton Christmas movie.
Oh, wow.
How long ago was that? And there was a part in it where, because you get to hear Earl Hamner wrote in, some of his journal entries from when he was a boy. And at one point, John Boy says in his journal, he says, "I'm so afraid every day I'm growing, and it seems like something horrible is happening, and I don't know how to tell my mother." And this is a typically developing, eloquent young man, and I remember hearing that and going, "Oh, I don't remember being frightened," but that's something that I just brought it up for me, that it can be frightening for some kids.
Yeah.
And just recently, I love to look at my son's feet, and I always tell him how beautiful his feet are. And I was saying to him the other day that his feet are changing because he's growing older, and they've gotten so much bigger, and now he has these very pronounced knuckles in his toes. And I said, "Oh, you're starting to turn into a man." And he said, "What do you mean?" And I said, "Do you see how your toes are changing? You're getting these knuckles." And we talked about the fact that he was going to start to grow hair on his legs in different places, and this was very fascinating to him. And we were talking about how some men are very hairy and some men aren't. And then right after that, there was a commercial with a guy who was really hairy, had hair everywhere, and so he was really noticing. And that's exactly the kind of thing that we need to be doing while it's innocuous, right?
Exactly.
Before it overtakes.
So then when he starts to see hair on his legs, he's not going to be like, "Whoa,
what happened here?" Yeah.
He's going to see it in that conversation, or those examples that he's seen on TV will start to make sense to him. He'll be like, "Oh, okay." And that might spur a ton of questions. Am I going to get this hair? Am I going to get that hair? What do I do? Do I shave my legs? Do I not shave my legs? Girls shave their legs. Why don't I?
Right.
And that's when we get into some gender differences when it comes to just hygiene and how to take care of ourselves. But that's a perfect example of why we want to start those conversations early, because when those things start happening, there's an awareness. There's some type of an understanding, and it takes away some of the fear, I would say, or some of
or anxiety.
The anxiety that comes with it, and it replaces it with more just curiosity and questions. I would much rather have curiosity and questions than fear and anxiety.
Yeah. And I had said to him, I said, "Look at you, you're growing up, you're not just a big boy, you're going to be a man, and when you're a man," and trying to build in all these things that he was going to get to do when he was a man, so that it's not this frightening kind of thing. But it's me that's frightened.
You don't want him to think he's a transformer, and all of a sudden, one day he's going to be popping out and turning into a man.
Yeah, he's getting tall, though. It's crazy how they grow. They grow and they change.
What happens
I think it is harder for
food, water, and love, right? They just keep getting bigger and bigger.